let's just say that these aren't normal illegal immigrants. Virtually all of these that are being removed right now have very specific associations, and not all with the cartels. The order of operations is the first ones you get rid of are the ones who would actually be the ones actively engaged in a civil war.
The problem we have in silver, you move silver to $100 an ounce, everybody wants to sell their silver. And the refiners have been told to shut down. The wholesalers can't get any more credit. From which banks? They're trying to restrict the physical supply to demoralize people because they're only being offered 80 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar versus the spot price in silver.
E.M. Burlingame and Tom Luongo have an awesome show for you tonight, right here at ESW.
Good morning, everybody. Cowboy here, and I have a special treat for you today. We got Tom Luongo, E.M. Burlingame here together. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. This is a high-powered podcast. I love this kind of stuff. So first of all, take a look in the description. We got these guys' information in here. I believe I've got E.M.'s Substack and E.M.'s Twitter in there. Tom, we got your information there as well. Gold, Goats, and Guns. Easy to find on Twitter as well. And if either of you have a particular place you want us to find you, E.M., you go first, and then Tom, you can go after that.
Oh, those are best. Or you can go to the emburlingame.com website and look at books.
Yeah, and for us, it's just make sure that if you like what you hear and you want to make sure that I can continue to do what I do, we make our money through Patreon/Gold, Goats, and Guns. That's it. So
yeah, of which I'm a member, and I also have E.M.'s books. I happen to have the signed editions, but I can always just do like I do every so often and knock on E.M.'s door and bug him, and he'll just give. I'll beg for another signed edition of something.
I'll give him a book to make him go away.
Yes, all right, kid, get out of here. Get out of here, kid. You bother me.
Oh, it's better than showing up with your podcast gun. So
I have mine.
Yeah.
Mine's up in the cabinet. It's off screen.
There you go.
I have mine. I generally don't put it on the screen as some of my friends do. I actually have several of them, as we all do. I think you guys are probably better armed than I am, though. Honestly, Tom, you definitely are. E.M., I just no comment. So.
I don't know. I just, it was funny. Like things were heating up kind of, and this is funny. Like I listen to, in like Ghost in the Shell terms, I listen to my ghost. I listen to that voice in the back of my head every once in a while. Right. And I'm like, my ghost told me back in, I don't know, November, start buying guns again. My ghost 2 weeks ago told me to rewatch Patton. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's where my head's been. And I can tell you that rewatching Patton and then going down and doing a deep dive on him himself and like deepening my understanding of who he was. Yeah, that's about where my head is right now. I'm in a pretty much we're American, fuck you, that's why, like in mode. That's where I am at this point. And I think that I think everybody needs to rewatch Patton and rewatch it as a biased version of a man who understood just how important winning wars is, not necessarily the bloodshed during the war, right? And that he understood that war was about winning. It wasn't about, it wasn't necessarily about killing. It was about glory and honor and reasserting civilization and all of those things. And protecting the innocent and, getting out of a crisis period decisively. And that's the way he fought across Europe. And then he was restrained by political forces at the end. And that's just, it's funny. The movie like glosses over everything after goes from the Battle of the Bulge to after the war. And it's that 3 months in 1945, the first 3 months in 1945, that are the most important. I think the most important years of Patton were he and Eisenhower's friendship between World War I and World War II. Mm-hmm. I believe that what we are seeing now, the Roosevelts and the Pattons, because Patton was nobility, American nobility. Yes, he was.
Blue blood family. They had identified in Eisenhower a leader capable of all of the complex, sophisticated thought and social skills necessary, kind of like Trump. And they were setting up through the 1930s this removal of the British system as a warning to Eisenhower. They killed his best friend, who was a blue blood. And just the same, they tried to continue with the Kennedys, and so they killed them. So,
E.M, you've got a pretty good understanding of like bloodlines and such things. The Kennedys being Irish. Is there lineage of any note?
Well, what we have to look at with the Irish is that's a mixing of peoples. You've got Scots, you've got Vikings, and some of those are old noble families, and then you've got English as well, right? So when you say English or you say Irish or you say Scottish, you got to look that there is a mixing of genetic peoples, many of which go back to the Normans or Viking nobility. And so even though you have an Irish family with an Irish name, you have to look at their genetics and you have to look at their family lineage. And often you'll find that they have a portion of their genetics that are Irish. But other than that, they're either Scottish nobility, Normans that got there sometime after 1066 or after Cromwell, or they come from Viking nobility, Scandinavian nobility.
So with that, like, because again, this is such your domain, if you will. Those nobility lines, are they traced back? Are they of consequence? Does that lineage going so far back and diffuse? Is that relevant, do you think, especially like in the Kennedy's case?
Depends on the matrilineal side of the family. How much do the mothers and teach their daughters to love and revere their family history and their family line, because the mothers teach the sons from the moment they're born. And so, when you look at Patton, you listen to his writings, he very much understood his ancestry. He very much recognized himself, particularly in the American case, but going all the way back. So to your question, it really matters, and this is my own family, what the mother teaches their sons and daughters. If the mother's the matrilineal side, which is the one that generally goes unbroken, like Clint Eastwood, is actually through his mother, a descendant of, I think, the second or third oldest American family. Family got here in like 1606 or 1602 or something. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, well, look at him, look at his movies, look at his political statements, look at his, personal conduct in life. He takes it very serious. So it's not so much, in terms of what we think of like royalty or, a duke somewhere that's got titled estates. It's the heritage, and they take the heritage very seriously.
Tom, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, because this is one of the things that we identified about Jerome Powell very early on.
Correct.
Jerome Powell is 8th generation American.
Yeah.
And by the way, so was Scott Bessent.
Yeah.
And Trump made a point of that when he nominated Bessent. I picked up on this because knowing that about Powell, right? That when Trump comes in for the second term and then he nominates Bessent, nobody knows anything about him, right? Because he's the complete unknown in that respect. And the only thing the British want us to know is that he used to work for George Soros.
Yeah.
But then Trump, in his nomination letter, if you read it very carefully, he devotes an entire paragraph to Scott's, heritage as a French Huguenot, tracing his family back in South Carolina to the 1680s.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, oh, that's a tell. That's a dead tell. It's very, very important. He's saying, I have the people who are in charge here of the American financial system. They're both 8th generation Americans.
Yeah. It's also
interesting. He has his quibbles with Powell, certainly, but I don't
but
think
he doesn't trust Powell's loyalty. Correct. To the U.S.
I don't think he did, right, to the U.S. He just disagrees with them on policy.
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally different.
And some of that might be subterfuge too, right? Sure, it's interesting that Powell and Bessent and several others around are what we would call second batch Americans, still old stock, but they're second batch Americans, and then they got here after the 1650s. Because that was a different group from, England, Scotland, etc.
Yeah, I have a German heritage. I'm a lot of stuff. Obviously, I have the Sicilian, the heaviest of my heritage, but I have some German, a lot of it actually. and they came
so
in
sorry.
the mid 1700s.
Yeah.
If I only had Japanese, we got the Italians, we got the Germans.
I'm just
The
Italian, so the
Yeah.
fact that you have German in you, I'm so sorry.
Hey, you know what? You do what you got to do.
know.
That's
You're a
long
good
story.
ambassador. You're a good ambassador for you mixed bloods. That's fine.
Right.
Mug
No,
bloods.
Tom, what's your
Yes.
opinion on Kevin Warsh?
Let's put it this way: what Trump put out this morning, I think, is the most important part, which is that Kevin is a guy whose primary focus is to bring the Fed and the Treasury more in alignment with each other. And that's anathema to the British system.
Do we know whether or not he has like heritage going back to the 1600s or anything?
Oh, I haven't had a chance to. It's funny. I didn't until Trump was going to nominate anybody. I didn't actually do any of that work, so I can't speak to it. We
I'm
could
gonna look it
probably
up.
do a quick Google search or Grok search on it and find out. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up while we're talking. But you guys, I have you on here, and I always have questions that I have ready to go. And in fact, my questions are at this point involving Iran. Trump is floating basically a battle carrier group, if I'm not mistaken, over to Iran, right? And that being the case, the way I'm looking at the prior issue with Iran back in June, we supposedly dropped bunker busters and, okay, maybe it was just a couple of firecrackers. And then the event ended. Israel, Iran had peace. We can talk about who needed the ceasefire more. Those are all theoretical, but at least what we do know is that there was a very limited engagement that gave us the ability to say that there's no more nuclear, planned there.
Right.
And therefore there was no fight there. Well, now we're sending a battle carrier group there, if that terminology is correct. What are we doing here? Are we going to start a war in Iran?
We're
And
replacing
Tom,
a
I'll
battle. We're
go ahead.
replacing a battle. Well,
No,
just
I
Tom.
want to hear EM's take on this. So go ahead.
Yeah, terribly sorry. I was only trying to give a little piece. Actually, we're not sending. We're replacing a carrier battle group. Right.
Well, I know we are
not an original. They have limited time that they can field themselves, so we have to rotate them out.
Yeah.
And Tom, you had talked about and I don't want to give away too much here, but I think you've said it publicly on our show rather than in the Patreon alone. But not having a battle carrier group in the Gulf means that that's going to limit our ability to be involved in such conflicts, which is a very obvious statement. Having moved our group to, I think, Puerto Rico was, for those of us who, err on the side of trusting a plan, might have been part of the plan, right? To keep us out of such an engagement. There's the other theory that we simply are rotating battle carrier groups. And EM, thank you for EM. I want to give you a chance to say something to that and then move it to Tom.
Yeah, well, what we have to look at is this. What is a carrier battle group? It's a continent. It's a floating continent worth of sensors, detectors, computational resources, signals detection, signals intercept, right? It is a sophisticated suite of electronics that can sweep all kinds of, every spectrum that we can sweep, right? And at distance, and can capture all kinds of signals, virtually any signal type that's out there that has the processing power, computational processing power to crack encryption. All of that stuff is in a carrier battle group, and the aircraft and, submarines and the other ships that are there and all of the, the whole kit and the sundry. It is our most sophisticated detection capabilities and signals intercept and interfere capabilities. If I was worried about World War III at this point, the only thing that could launch it would be a dirty nuke. And the only one that could launch it right now would be a dirty nuke in Israel that was blamed on the Iranians.
Okay. Well, that's, I definitely understand that concept. And World War III, we can kind of get to that and some ideas around that, but I want to give Tom a chance to kind of say what you think about Iran as well.
I'm gonna knowing that we're just replacing one carrier battle group with another, and that we use that strategically to let people know that this is like we play this game with, hey, there's 2 paracarrier battle groups in the Persian Gulf right now. Yeah, because one of them is about to leave because the other one's replacing the other one. And so it's used as a means by which to, highlight and let people know that there's something going on, but that's not necessarily, does it really mean anything? What used to scare you is when there's 2 carrier battle groups in the Persian Gulf and one of them isn't leaving.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first part of that. To EM's, thought on, what would be a kickoff for a potential World War III, dirty nuke coming out of at Israel, blamed on Iran, or I wouldn't say even vice versa, but just something along those lines. Yeah, right. I can see that completely. So we're not going to allow that area of the world to be uncovered, because it just makes no strategic sense whatsoever if your goal is to avoid World War III, which is pretty clear that that's what Donald Trump's operational focus is from a foreign policy perspective.
Well, and Putin and Xi. Yeah.
And Xi and Putin and everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree completely, EM. And so you have to realize that, they're losing the ground war in the United States, the domestic ground war in the United States. They just got their asses handed to them in Minnesota.
Can you clarify who's losing?
Oh, Davos / City of London, however you want to call it. Yeah, the financials.
I want to revert to that because there are a lot of people who might disagree with that statement, but we'll come back to that.
It's the financialists, whatever flavor you want to put on them.
Right. I mean,
it's all the flavors.
Exactly. Everybody wants to blame somebody else because they need a binary, simple through-line story in order to satisfy their spurginess. I don't care if you're a Jewsburg versus a Britsburg versus a Frenchburg versus a Vaticansburg. I don't give a shit. Like, I really don't care. Okay, that's between you and your therapist, and I don't give a shit. What I care about, so I call them Davos, right? It's the catch-all term for all of these different factions. We can argue amongst themselves whether they're fighting amongst themselves, but what's important is that Xi, Putin, and Trump have no interest in this game. As I say over and over and over again, there are 4 spheres of influence in the world: America, Russia, China, and Europe, and 3 of them hate the 4th. You figure it out from there. So they're getting their asses handed to them. They want a civil war in the United States. They want to triangulate China against the United States in order to back the United States off. They want to use Canada as the triangulatory wedge issue. That's why Mark Carney went to China 2 weeks ago. That's why Mark Carney played that game he played at Davos.
Oh, and Starmer was just there the other day.
Starmer was just there.
Visa-free
same thing. Agreed. Same thing. And, while they've got Gavin Newsom destroying the energy infrastructure of California, which is a national security issue. So you've got Bonvino and Customs Border Patrol on the ground in LA, literally doing the hoorah. Whose city is this? It's ours. After having, pushed the pawn in Minnesota. Now Tom Homan is cleaning that shit up. You've got Tulsi Gabbard and company going into Fulton County, Georgia to get all the 2020 election records. Like, they're attacking on multiple fronts. They're losing the domestic war because Trump is attacking on 5 fronts over there. So, of course, now it's just back to head on a swivel. Now we go back to foreign policy. Like, after Venezuela, they moved to domestic policy, right? We attacked them on Venezuela, foreign policy. So they spin up Minnesota, right? We take down Minnesota. We start attacking there. They're going to now move somewhere. They're going to try and move international. Like, that's the game at this point, and
whack-a-mole.
At least it's one of the versions of the games that's being played. You can't map them all, folks, but this is a framework to put in your head and intellectually for you to analyze the game board with. It's not meant to be a holistic, look at the game board. It's a mechanism by which to analyze the game board, and then you can start seeing the other pieces. You can see the other moves on the board. We could talk about India. We could talk about this because they're happening all over the place, all at the same time. Yeah.
And I want to give EM a chance before I take the conversation further, but my own tiny bit of spurginess is going to go back to with this battle carrier group. We were saying that we're replacing a battle carrier group, and yet I was under the impression that there was no battle carrier group in the region. So are we replacing one that left 2 months ago?
We virtually always have a carrier battle group within or in proximity of that part of the world. What we have to understand is these carrier battle groups don't just sit here in the United States or on the west side of the Atlantic or the east side of the Pacific. They're constantly in motion and movement. Now, yes, we have some in dry dock, and yes, we have some, in repair, et cetera, in other places or refit, but they are constantly on the move.
Yep.
And they are just like the Green Berets, we are regionally oriented, right? Mm-hmm. First group, Asia, Far East and South and Southeast Asia. Fifth group, CENTCOM, right? We're third group, Africa. 10th group, Europe, right? Seventh groups, South and Central America. So we are regionally oriented. So are the carrier battle groups. Now, when you get, very much to what Tom said, when you get a carrier battle group that doesn't normally operate within a region, now they're not always fixed either because there's logistical issues and movement issues, et cetera. But when you get an extraordinary, well, why is the Gerald Ford group going there now? Because Gerald Ford group's normally over in the Atlantic or wherever. Now you got to ask questions. But otherwise, it's just normal movements of carrier battle groups. It's just normal movements. Now, how does that get played? Now, something that Tom talks on. What are we doing? We're leaving a message. We have all of the sensory capabilities in your area. Try something, right? And don't think for a second. So China's moved assets as well to the western part of its country. And Russia also has assets in Kazakhstan and elsewhere. So don't think for a second that the sensors, to ensure this type of attack doesn't happen, this type of movement doesn't happen. Don't think that the Russians and Chinese also don't have extraordinary sensor capabilities on the north and the east part of Iran, also looking and watching and tracking and monitoring. Right. So that's there.
Nice. And I got to start saying carrier battle group instead of battle carrier group, so I can not sound as group. Ignorant as
I'm not a Navy guy. I get it wrong all the time, right?
Well, but you serve
a flotilla, a floating continent. With respect to unconventional warfare, which is what we're up against, right? We're in a late stage insurgency. You both have domestic focused efforts, right? Destabilization, shadow government, et cetera, efforts. And you have international efforts because if you decide you're going to go from phase 5 to phase 6, so phase 5 is build up and train up and prepare. And phase 6 is a war of movement, but actual conflict, prolonged actual conflict. One or you as the insurgent need to be materially supplied both internally and externally. And so does the nation state. The United States, if this does go to civil war, are going to have to be materially supported by Russia and China. Have to be. We don't have the manufacturing capacities. We don't have the stockpiles. We just burned them up in the Ukraine for 3 years, right? So we're going to have to be materially and otherwise supported from the outside. And the only two powers that could do that are Russia and China. And so there's this all-out effort. This is what Carney to China was about. This is what Starmer to China was about. It's to stir up all of and we know some of these guys in common, particularly you and I, Tom, right? It's to stir up all the anti-China folks, all the folks whose particular fetish is hating Chinese. It's to stir up this Chinese fetish that the Chinese are coming, the Chinese are coming, the Chinese are against us. Somebody this morning posted something about the CCP flooded 10,000 men into the country over the last 4 years. Well, first off, that's a bullshit number. Second off, how many of those are not Chinese, mainland Chinese? How many of those are Chinese that live somewhere in the former British Empire? Maybe former Hong Kong, maybe Singapore, Malaysia, all over. There are tens of millions. Actually, I think it's closer to 100 or 200 million Chinese who live outside of China that are not CCP related, who are not Chinese, who are former British Empire related. Do you think they do not have vast numbers so that they could fake?
Pull 10,000 guys like that out of Vancouver.
I was going to say, yeah.
Right
on the border.
We could pull them out of Los Angeles and move them somewhere else in the country and we wouldn't know. Sure. Right? Or San Francisco. Right? 52% of the population of San Francisco is Asian. right? And the greater 80% of that is Chinese. So the point is that the fundamental thing we all need to hold is the ground that we can hold to is truth. They are trying to start a war. They are, whether it's civil war or world war, doesn't matter. They're going to try on both fronts until the day they are stopped. And that's going to be years from now, if not decades, right? Till they're broken and bankrupted. That's going to take quite some time. So they're never going to stop trying a war domestically and internationally. Or as a key component of that, they will do everything in their power. Deceit, and actual actions, assassinations, etc., to keep ARC from being, from sustaining. And again, not as a formal treaty alliance group. No, just as powers on the world stage that are like this one thing, like mob bosses, just straight up. It's the 5 families, and the 5 families are saying we are not going to do a mob war. We got to fix some stuff. We're going to have a fight. Hey, me, the Gambinos. I got to go to war with my own family right now. I got to fix some problems. Right? You over there and the other families, do what you got to do.
They're going to try to make a deal with Solorzo. So
and we'll fight about some of the border stuff.
Yeah.
And,
we're still all in conflict with each other. Yeah. We're still mob families. But
I finally finished Sandworms of Dune. I went through Chapter House, and then I went through the one that was after it. And it's just so funny because
I still haven't finished Sandworms. I'm like doing it 2 chapters at a time, like 8 pages of them. It's not a bad book. It's just slow.
Well, it's just and without getting too far, because you mentioned you were reading Chapter House. I'm like, I'm reading Chapter House right now. I got to tell Tom, and this was like months ago. But now I'm reading The Godfather. So now you're making references. I'm like,
but the same thing is playing out and clearly playing out. And what Herbert talked to me, E.M. and I could probably do an entire podcast on just talking about how Frank Herbert saw the future. Just on a metaphoric level, right?
Well, I think maybe even structural level. I think he actually saw structurally what's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he did.
Yeah.
I mean, we can, there's a whole lot there, but I don't know how it. I don't have it ends yet, so don't tell me, Nick.
I haven't read it.
I'm sure that
it's worth it. Look, here there's some things. There's some things that are rather obvious, and then that kind of bugs me. How far are you in?
About I think Kindle says 42%. So
the
right around the time when Duncan Idaho finally gets up off his ass and starts to actually act again and starts being Duncan Idaho.
Has the no ship made it to the Handler's Planet yet?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
we're well past that.
There's an insurgency after that, and you figure out who that is, and it's like they make it really obvious, but they belabor that obvious. So that bugs me. But look, it's a good story. I don't want to make the viewers all start changing the channel here because they don't want to hear about that. But there, if you can read a book like that or The Godfather, and you can see the intricacies of, fiction is always going to be mirroring real life and maybe back and forth, but usually people are getting their ideas from things that happen in real life. And I'm kind of in between. I know, Tom, you're affectionately, and I mean this in the nicest way, you're a trust the plan guy, right? And then there are others who make fun of that. Like, there is no plan, stop trusting the plan. It's like, no, wait a minute. I mean, this is international politics. There are enough pieces on the board to call it chess, whether you want to call it 2D or 4D. I think that's kind of silly. It's a chessboard, and it's complex, and it's probably more complex than any book we've ever listened to and read. So I think it really behooves us to understand that we don't know everything that is going on.
That's the important part.
And then on top of that, to sympathize with those who might actually disagree with people who trust the plan. The problem that I have is that we're at this point going to have a real hard time at the end of this year as the midterms approach with the way we've been handling things. And my opinion on mass deportation, and this is an opinion that has been not just mine, it's a lot of us. If we really were going to push mass deportation, there are far easier ways to do it. There are going to be some eggs that get broken while making that omelet, because you can't do it without a little bit of violence or a lot. But I also think that if they really, really wanted to get people to leave, then we would be making it illegal to give benefits to people who are, not legally here. And I know there are some people, not all, some of them in California are getting almost $2,000 a month when you put it all together, right? So you know, and there's plenty of databases out there, and this is something that Gus Demos talks about. Where I mean, look, you could cross-check the DMV, and it would not be that hard to locate using data, and then cut off all the money, and then you can target the employers who are hiring them. And this is again, I'm now going to borrow from Velas, is the reality is our economy relies on what is effectively slave labor, people who will come here, work for small amounts of money and have no rights. And I think if we like literally did what I think would be relatively simple things to get rid of a portion of the problem that is substantial, cutting off the money, all those, you know, targeting the employers, that kind of thing, I think our economy would have a hard time because a lot of companies wouldn't survive without.
I've done a piece on this, actually written out the actual numbers, done the math. Other people have done the math.
Well, let's hear it.
Hundreds of billions of dollars a year in the United States that it benefits the economy at every level. The other fundamental piece is what we have to think about is it isn't just the financialists who don't want us to reset and remove the people, et cetera. You have to think about all the money that flows to all these countries in the form of remittances. And you have to look at what banks that money sits in.
Yep.
Most of those are all former colonial banks.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't want to see this return of these people either because they don't want those remittances to stop flowing into their banks.
Yep.
See,
no,
this is
the, you know, Nick, to all of your points, this is very true. And all I'm going to say is I don't disagree with any of those points that were made, right? Why aren't we cutting off all this money? We could do this and we could do fine. This is a process, right? It's triage. The patient's bleeding out. So you have to fix one thing and you have to fix one problem at a time. And you want to fix a portion of this by pulling the marginal demand off of housing and healthcare and all these things by getting rid of getting the easy 5 or 10% off the top. Not all of them. Just the first, and then that stabilizes things, and then you can move to the next 5%, and the next 10%, next 10%, and it's got to be. You've got to also replace it. You've got to replace some of this labor, and that's only going to take time. With you know, from a native population standpoint, it's not like I can grow a human in 18 months. It takes 18 years. So this is
we don't have golas here.
Yeah, I mean, like going over the Banks Relax aren't like sitting in the corner, like you know. Fast-growing kids. Yeah, I know they're working on it, but the point being, folks, is that you know these are competing. You know, if you want to think of it mathematically, these are competing functions that are and you're trying to differential equations. There's 5 or 6 of these you got to solve for, and this is your rate equation of how to move all of these different variables, and you got 5 or 6 different variables you got to solve for, and they're all going to be moved at different times. And sometimes you're going to push on X, and other times you're going to push on Y, and other times you're going to push on T, and other times, and you have to look at it that way. And if you say that, and if you want to dismiss that as 4D chess, then fuck you, because that's society, that's humanity. You got 350 million people to manage, and you're going to just reduce everything to do this or you suck. Fuck you. You're just a false binary spur. Again,
so
back to this whole concept.
This is where I agree. Like I agree with the concept of an order of operations. Sure. And E.M, I'm sorry to run over you on that. Okay. But what the concern I have is the timeline. There's going to be, and by the way, both of you have your capabilities in game theory, maybe from separate areas of the world, or separate areas of life. But the way I look at it is, sure, we have to do this before we do that. If we do this, it's going to like ruin the whole thing or whatever it might be. Now, if that's the case, there is a countdown. So the question is, can the enemy run down the clock, and are we going to have to start amputating limbs on the patient in order to save the patient? That's kind of where I'm at with it. Meaning that, okay, is the midterms the time clock? Is it 2020, 30? Is it the bond market? That whatever that time clock might be, when things are really going to start falling apart and things become somewhat untenable, And I know there may be a lot. I'm throwing a lot of variables out, guys. This is the multivariate equation with all the different, trying to do there's no linear regression on this one, guys. This is nonlinear. And I want to hear from both of you guys on what do you think the time clock is, and can we beat that clock?
So I think we don't know the answer to that until the elections this year. If they can change the balance of power and they can lock in the Congress's ability to just do nonstop congressional lawfare against the administration, then we've lost. Mm-hmm. And then I think this goes to blood very much. Yep. And I think it goes to revolution kind of blood, not just civil war, et cetera. Because there are grave concerns amongst a good number of us, many of us who have actually been in the guts of the financial system and banking, et cetera, for decades, about about a theft of, a couple $100 trillion of the commons that's being locked in by this transition to this new digital financial system. And I'm not talking about CBDCs and all that. That's a red herring. That's just nonsense. It's not possible. But I don't think we can answer the question. So very much to what Tom's saying, and in agreement with Tom, and then somewhat you said, we are putting tourniquets on the bleeding body right now so that we can stop the bleeding. But it's a tourniquet. And at some point, you're going to have to get in there and do surgery, and you're going to have to stop the bleeding, and you're going to have to get the tourniquet off, or they are going to lose the limb, right? To use your metaphor more. So right now, what we're doing is tourniquets. Now, Colonel Watkins and I are very much in agreement. If we look at the folks that are being removed, and also why there's so much active physical vitriol and so much money being invested in countering these people being removed, well, let me be careful. Let's just say that these aren't normal illegal immigrants. Let's also maybe say that some of these, or virtually all of these that are being removed right now, have very specific associations, and not all with the cartels. Meaning these are the ones that are so Tom, to your point, right? Order of operations, when you're doing differential equations, right? So we're doing some complex differential equations, and the order of operations is the first ones you get rid of are the ones who would actually be the ones actively engaged in a civil war. You get rid of the war fighters and the warfighter leadership first.
Yep.
Right? Now, I suspect very much to this, and this is somewhat aside, and there's other people way smarter than me on this, even though I publicly in the special operations community said in 2019 they're going to steal the 2020 election, and I was looked at like I had 5 extra eyes in very inappropriate places. Even though
that's a great metaphor, by the way. Nice. As a writer.
Thank you.
There you go. Point.
My suspicion is that the reason they focused on Fulton County is that Fulton County. Okay, so we know Letitia James. I called this one out years ago too, with a certain $300+ billion family. Just like Letitia James is the focus locus, and New York, right? The New York courts, et cetera. But Letitia James really, and the money's out of Brooklyn. People can look into that. Brooklyn monies, right? Foreign monies mostly. Just like Letitia James is the head of the lawfare operations over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I suspect that Fulton County has been the headquarters and the leadership for not all, but much of the voter fraud that's been going on across the country, particularly not just in Georgia, but there, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Arizona, Colorado, et cetera. Because these types of operations, et cetera, do get run out of somewhere. Now that somewhere can get shut down. They'll put it up, they'll bring it back up somewhere else. But somebody here was actually coordinating this way beyond just Georgia. And I suspect why they're going after Georgia and the records, et cetera, is one, because those bureaucrats got too cocky and kept documents, kind of like the Nazis, kind of like bureaucrats do, right? And that implicates elections in New York and all over the place, California, et cetera. So
Interesting. Yeah. And I
operations, right? You get rid of the war fighters, you get rid of the irregular guerrillas first. You have to. You go after the voter fraud stuff so that you can stabilize the 2026 elections.
Yep.
And then if you can stabilize the 2026 elections, then you can accelerate all of your other efforts.
Yep.
And if you can do all of that by highlighting and drawing, Tom, the conversations we've been having off and on and indirectly, but if you can do that while, sorry people, but doing even greater and broader depth of loyalty tests, not just your own, not just who's loyal to you, but causing your enemy to move in such a way that they have to loyalty test their own people.
Yep.
And now they just highlighted their networks and you're like, okay. So that's my suspicion.
We know who works for him. We know he works for him. We know he works for him.
Right.
That's
See,
very
this is where
important.
I was going to come back to Minnesota because we have a lot of talk right now, especially from like the Groyper type group, where it's a failure, and there's all these a lot of radicalization going on. We talked about that on a different show.
Morons, but they're really morons. Like seriously.
Yeah. But morons are dangerous. Morons can be very dangerous.
I've been tuning in here and there because I'm trying to figure out. And we talked about this E.M. I'm trying to figure out whose payroll he's on, and it may, like E.M. said, he might not be on any payroll. It's just
that's not how it's done today for these folks. It's just the algos behind the scenes are tweaked so that they get paid through the social media platforms like so many others.
Yeah, and that said,
plausible, deniable, hands off.
Well, he's so radioactive that they won't even pay him. He just gets, they allow him to get paid. But either way, whatever the case may be, there's a lot being whipped up on that side of things. And it's dangerous. And the problem is, as it is with many influencers, a lot of the lies are wrapped in truth. But I'd be interested in...
It's the British. Just say it very easily. I'll jump ahead of Tom. It's the British. Same with Andrew Tate and all the Tate brothers, et cetera. Those are two sides. The Groypers and the Tates are two sides of the same operation.
Well, and
to radicalize our young men and destroy our young men.
And then you can throw in all the libertarians who are crashing out.
And
they're all British. I don't mean it. Sorry, guys.
And they're not even being willfully obtuse at this point. They're literally like, now we're watching. We're like, oh, by the way, Thomas Massey is taking money, not from AIPAC, but he's taking it from the same people that fucking Ellen Armour is getting. Same families. They're getting the money from the same people. So, and like, why is Kentucky all of a sudden nothing but, cuck rhino central, right?
Here's what I think libertarians are. I think libertarians are the non-gay estrogenic males.
Okay. That's
what they act like. They act like estrogen, and estrogenic is just they're not gay.
I've been calling bedwetting pillow biters, but that's it's another way of putting it. But I'm at that point. Like, and this is again why I needed to go back and rewatch Patton. It's like get yourself in that mindset of you are in a warrior mentality that you're willing to protect the innocent, and what are you willing to do to protect the innocent? Are you willing to go to war to protect the innocent, or are you going to sit around all day and count how many Rothbards can dance on the head of a pin? And how do you motivate
your men to do the worst that's necessary? Yeah.
Right. And actually feed their enthusiasm to go out and protect the innocent and fight the war that needs to be fought. That's because they don't want to actually commit to having any fucking skin in any game, because it's nothing but oppositional defiance disorder as political movement. That's what it is. Period.
It's all women.
So with the Bene Gesserit are real. The
Bene Gesserit.
No, the Bene Gesserit are based.
No. This is part of the missionaria protectiva of the Bene Gesserit. Libertarianism is a religion, and they just seed that out there, right?
Everybody's homework: go read Dune. Go
read Dune again.
Yeah. So try to walk the balance here, because
why
I'm always.
It's his job, E.M. Come on, man.
I caught myself there and said, "Oh yeah," but
I walk barefoot on like a razor. Give me a break. The way I'll put it is, it's a game theory issue as much as it is a skeptical issue, right? So even in the world of we have a good plan, it may not work out, and then I can always distill it to what can we do, what can't we do, and does any of this stuff matter? moving it back to the Minnesota thing, which is why I mentioned the Groypers. By the way, to think that Fuentes is backed or at least influenced by British, it's been a very recent thing that he's been shilling Bannon, who is Chatham House, by the way. So we got to bear that in mind. So just to throw that in there. But back to Minnesota, a lot of people are, especially the Groypers, are going to see that as a loss. Like, okay, we didn't do the mass deportation. Now they're pulling back, and we're never going to see mass deportations because of this thing that happened. We're calling it a tragedy. We need to go harder. We're not softer. Can you guys, and I'll say Tom, go first. Tell me how Minnesota was a win.
Sure. Let's start with the beginning that the Groyper position is a maximalist position of it has to be 100% this or it's useless, which is a bullshit position. It's a false dyad, right? You create a false positive in order to turn everything into a negative, right?
Purity spiral.
What's that? It's a purity spiral, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
How does he win? He wins by he got Tim Walz to back down. So let's go through the order of events between like Sunday and Monday morning. Like Sunday night and Monday morning are very interesting because we have all these reports that Xi Jinping was going to be overthrown in a military coup out of China, which is mostly bullshit, but very important because they threw it out there because somehow Carney at Canada thought that there was going to be a way to triangulate between Trump and the United States by they were going to gin up an overthrow of Xi in China, and then they were going to control China and use that and then have Canada be the wedge issue between the two of them. That broke. Then you had the announcement that they were up on all the signal chats and that the lieutenant governor and that they had broken that the lieutenant governor was one of the ringleaders, and probably Tim Walz was in there too, and so was Jacob Fry. But they didn't let that information out. But I'm sure that they were in there.
Yeah.
Right. So you let out the lieutenant governor because the lieutenant governor is going to be the patsy. Data Republican comes out Sunday night, and she dumps a whole bunch of information on the market. Now, you think the Data Republican got this information for free? That she's just a great researcher? No, give me a fucking break. So like Nick Shirley was handed Quality Learning Center to show up with a GoPro and a fucking microphone and give the imprimatur and the impression that this is citizen journalism, right? Because that way they don't have to get freaking warrants, or they don't have to get, they don't have to go through the FBI bureaucracy. They don't have to let anybody know what's going on and all this other bullshit.
They don't have to use their enemy's infrastructure.
Right. You don't have to use any of the enemy's infrastructure, which is the FBI and the DOJ and everything else. And you find out from Data Republican, if you look closely at the names she put out, a friend of mine pointed this out because he works inside the British Columbian government. In effect, he's a contractor for the city of Vancouver. So he knows all these people, and those names started popping out. And he's like, oh, this is all going right through the city of the province of British Columbia, political machine. And that means that's going to apply their banks, the relationship with China, blah, blah, blah. So the Chinese were getting framed as, if you look at it, the Chinese were getting framed as running a color revolution operation through British Columbia into Minnesota. That all got laid fucking out if you had any eyes to see. Now, I happen to have the right set of eyes because I had the right set of people's eyeballs on it. And so we figured all this out as it was unfolding in real time, where we're sitting there literally chatting in a private Discord channel we had. And then the next morning, Trump comes out and says, I'm bringing Tom Homan in. I've had a long talk with Tim Walz. Tim Walz is getting ready, is willing to play ball, blah, 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 blah. And the holdout is Jacob Fry. And by Monday evening, the Minneapolis PD is wiping the streets clean of all of these kids.
Yep.
That's a fucking win. Because what did you get out of that? You get Minnesota was in open revolt, but the governor reinstated order, is working with the federal government. So now from the outside, the institutions of the country are still functioning.
Yes.
We don't lose faith that the federal government can't control a situation on the ground in Minnesota, which was the goal of the whole fucking operation in the first place.
And they did it, and they were able to do it without the National Guard.
And they were able to do it without the National Guard, the Insurrection Act, or anything else. Yep. So in no way, manner, shape, or form did he have to implement, even though he had every right to
screaming for it.
Bring the military in and do what needed to be done.
He
threaded the needle and allowed the civilian process to work itself through. He gets Waltz to agree to empty the fucking prisons, get all the low-hanging fruit of all the problems, the war fighters and all of those guys off the streets, back home where they fucking belong. And it's all over. And then we're going to throw the lieutenant governor under the bus. And then Jacob Fry gets to be noted as and outed as the real commie because he held out for another 24 hours. So just like Justin Trudeau was the figurehead in Canada and Chrystia Freeland was the actual ideologue running the operations. Yep. He's the CEO, doesn't know a goddamn thing. She's the COO and the CTO running the fucking operations on the ground. That's how Minnesota played itself out. So is that a win? That's the biggest fucking win you could ask for because the country didn't have to go to a constitutional crisis.
And I would add to just all the gripers out there. If you think that we have the manpower to mobilize a forced, mass deportation without killing like thousands and thousands of people, then you don't really know very much about anything, and you should probably just not talk.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, because you're not going to do it. You're not going to send in the army, and they're going to just go door to door. It's first of all, it's physically impossible. Secondly, it's politically impossible. Now, for that to happen, it would actually have to be like, I think, and this might be where E.M., your opinion would help. For a true exodus of the illegal aliens, I know we're not supposed to call them that, but fuck you. For a true mass exodus, it would have to be like at a civilian level. Like the people would have to do it. I mean, they're just the manpower required, the violence. We would have to be in such a place.
Every sheriff can deputize as many deputies as he wants under emergency conditions. And you have 20 million veterans. You've got 11 million veterans of the 20 wars in the last 20 years. But the GWAT guys, 27 years of experience now in the intel and the military, we know how to fight insurgencies because that's what we've been doing. Either we were the guys, the insurgents, or we were fighting against insurgents. And sometimes we were fighting against our own people like Syria and elsewhere, right? So
that's a real good point.
So the point is that we can do this all legally on mass scale just through sheriffs exercising. And by the way, the federal government can do it too, because the federal government can federalize, federally deputize people as they did with, I can't remember, DHS people or something. I can't remember exactly who, but they did that for Washington, D.C. That's why they were able to pull the National Guard out. They federally deputized other federal forces, Capitol Police. Right? Okay. So we can do all that without the need for armies and citizens to get up in arms, et cetera. However, if it doesn't accelerate, what the enemy's counting on, and dipshit fucking Gingrich comes out and says, well, we need to give amnesty, so now the whole shift is this, estrogenic right, again, this artificial right, the conservatives are the ones that are stepping out instead of the liberals. Liberals are doing the violence, and now the conservatives step up as the voice of reason and say, well, we can't do all of this. And, we need these people and all of this shit. We need to start shooting conservatives. But anyways, I digress.
Shooting them with kindness.
They're we don't
advocate violence.
They're way worse than the libertarians.
Yes, they are.
Way worse. Right?
Well, they're not really conservatives, are they?
No, they're not. Well, they're conserving the system, the regime. And the big part is, right, a lot of them are home builders and rental property owners. A lot of the conservatives. And so they're making vast fortunes off of all of this immigration stuff. In fact, they would not be anywhere near as wealthy as they are without it. So they have every incentive to keep it going. But to your point, there are mechanisms short of insurrection, short of all kinds of things, right? Federal need to do hard, ruthless things where sheriffs alone could just deputize. Now you're going to have the states, the individual states' rights, and the states are going to have the will to act and remove people. They can do that in concert with the federal government, which will bear the cost of transportation and housing and all this other kinds of stuff. So the point is that we do have the ability, and Eric Prince came out and said something brilliant the other day, absolutely brilliant, right? tax 100% all remittances that come out of the United States.
Yeah.
Freeze every account that's associated with those remittances.
You saw how much of a stink they put up on a 3.5% remittance tax.
Yeah.
They wanted to burn the country down.
Yeah,
Well, and here's why. Here's why. What people need to understand is that the USAID grift and this grift are exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're just another face of it. Why? Because again, in order on the banking system, I've been in the guts of the banking system. I helped build a bank. I was a low-level guy, but I was at with the top management and senior executives. Right. We built a bank back in the 90s, took it public, all those things, right? In order for a bank to do a transaction across the border, you have to connect through the SWIFT system to a trusted bank, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to have trusted, verified accounts. Well, when you're dealing with overseas, outside the United States and outside of Europe, you're dealing with South and Central America, Southeast Asia, you're dealing with Africa. The only banks that are trusted are all former colonial banks. And they all go right back to Santander and the other European banks, right? Which have all had a roll up in the last 20 years as well. There's only 4 or 5 of them left, right? So what we need to understand is that another portion of this theft of America is all the remittances going back into these colonial banks that then all flows back to Europe. Well, it doesn't flow back to Europe. It still sits in the colonial bank, but, it gets hypothecated and yada, 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 right? And so they don't want to see the countries themselves and those colonial banks do not want to see not only taxes on the remittances, but, they don't want to see those remittances stop. So Eric Prince, without saying all that, but directly went after the real problem. Tax remittances 100% and freeze, don't seize, but freeze every account associated with remittances on the U.S. side. And the only way in which they will have that account unfrozen is once they get back to their home country and initiate a a dialogue through their local bank, and then we'll unfreeze their monies in the United States with the proviso. You don't come back to the United States.
Right.
Unless you go through the normal legal immigration process.
Yes. Channels. That's fantastic. Yeah, no, it's very, very important. That's really, really important. I hadn't considered all that. So I had, but I hadn't been top of my head for quite a long time. So that's really good, E.M. The one other thing I wanted to bring up about the sheriffs, just to remind everybody, there's a reason why they don't try any of this shit in Florida. Because the power structure in Florida, just so everybody knows, is the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the 67 sheriffs. When you listen to guys like Grady Judd and all these other sheriffs, they get out there and they do and they're all over freaking YouTube because they're fucking hilarious. Those guys are some of the most powerful men in Florida because they are a constitutional fucking office.
It's all across the country. They are the sheriffs. It's a small club. It's a very small club. And they are the real power. This is unfortunately why here in Idaho, most of our sheriffs are not from here, because that's what you do. You import a sheriff from outside, and now they'll work against the local populace. And that's the case in many states. But the sheriffs are the real power.
That ain't the case in Florida.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
right?
I'm actually from I'm from Chad Bianco's district originally.
Yeah.
So, we've had crappy sheriff. There's been crappy sheriffs. Like, don't get me wrong. I used to live in Alachua County, and we could never get a halfway decent sheriff in Alachua County because it's run by fucking communists. But it's part of the reason why I moved out. Like, right? I literally 25 years ago, I moved out of Alachua County on purpose. So yeah, no.
This brings up a point, guys. Where people ask Nick, your crowd, and somebody asked me this morning, right, in a private message, how do we get a handle of local power? Well, there's only one person who really matters. That's your sheriff. Mm-hmm. So get the sheriff right. Don't focus on any of the other elected officials. None of them. The one person you have to get right is the sheriff. And then the second tier from there is there are certain judges, depending on the state, that are elected that have that do the warrants and do other things. And those ones, that's the second tier. But if you can get the sheriff right in your county, you have just changed the dynamic of power, because, and very much to what Tom's saying, because it's constitutional at the federal and the state level.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Very important. So, I mean, people ask us all the time, well, can we do it at the local level?
Yeah.
Well, E.M. just laid it out for you. You're a sovereigntist listening to this freaking podcast, and you think I don't have any power. No, that means the next time the sheriff is running a fundraiser, you need to make your name known and you need to hand him a freaking check. This is not very difficult.
Before that, Tom, what we need to do as people in counties is we need to figure out who the hell's running for sheriff and who are they really connected with, and who's really backing them, and what's their real politics before I give them a damn check, right?
Yeah. Obviously, but the basic idea here is that, look, at the end of the day, we know who you are. If you don't have a pair of titanium balls,
and you're not a pure constitutionalist, you're not going to be here, and you're not going to be sheriff for very long. So this is who represents. And this is what you can do if you are, if you live in a poor county and you have any amount of money whatsoever, you have more political power than you think. Or chicken or pigs or a side of beef or right. There's all kinds of, but the other piece I would say to this, Tom, though, is the other piece is that one of the things, so we need to recognize that the Praetorian problem is very real, even for sheriffs.
Mm-hmm.
Sheriffs' families are threatened. Judges are threatened.
Yes. Right.
And so in addition to mapping out who they are so that we feel confident enough to give them a check, we also need to let them know we have your back.
Exactly.
We have your back, because the sheriff's department's alone. You never know if you can trust all your deputies, and there's all this. So it's quite literally, we see you, we're behind you, we got your back. Somebody tries to harm you, somebody tries to harm your family, somebody comes after you in this county, we got your back. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the thing we need to realize. The enemy understands and uses physical violence and threats and intimidations and assassinations of even high-ranking, high net worth, high-powered people all the time. Right. And we run around acting like that shit doesn't happen or it's not real. We need to get over that. We need to realize that no. The way in which the world works is the mafia, the bigger mafia, the financialist mafia, is constantly threatening assassinations, sometimes, drug addiction. Who gave Reagan's daughter the drugs? And when? Remember Nancy Reagan? Drug problem? Mm-hmm. Who gave her the drugs and when? Mm-hmm. Was that just her going to a party? And right, these things happen.
Yeah, no, it's a very important point. Like what was the most obvious topic of conversation when Trump announced he was going to Davos? I wouldn't go there. They're going to kill him.
Yeah. Yes.
We all said the same thing. We talked about it once on a podcast. We talked about it a dozen times. Everybody I talked to, I don't think Trump should go to Davos. He better go with the biggest entourage. He did go with the biggest entourage. He was 10% of the friggin' group, right?
Yeah.
So they brought 300 people to a forum of 3,000. But
so
we all understand that violence is that they're willing to use violence. We all understand that they're willing to kill us all in order to control the population and COVID. But we need to
really internalize that, and we need to really understand that this is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
This is where they are, and more importantly, or not more importantly, but to that, I wrote a piece on this the other day about martyrdom. Right, the highest status that can be achieved on the resentful side is to be a martyr.
Mm-hmm.
And death by cop, death by fed, that's the highest form of martyrdom. So it's not just that they're willing to send people to kill you. It's that they're willing to send people against you that you're only, in some cases, your only choice to survive is to kill them. And now they're going to use that against you. And now they're going to come after you with that.
Well,
so
we got Oh no, and I'll please continue. But we got about 10 minutes left, a little bit more. So, Tom, first of all, E.M., finish where you were going.
No, I'm done there. It's just, again, two sides of the use of violence. One side of the use of violence is the mortal threat against you. The other side of the violence is sending somebody against you that your only way to deal with them in some cases, and an increasing amount, is to use mortal violence yourself. And then that gets used against you. So that was all I was trying to articulate.
Well, no problem. Closing thoughts, Tom.
About where we are or what's going on.
Yeah, I guess I'll prime it a little bit. We have a time clock. We have the midterms. The midterms, I think, are going to have a lot to do with whether or not, Donald Trump's going to have the ability to put forth any policies, whether you think his policies are good or bad. And on the assumption that his policies are going to help us, if we lose the midterms, because if you look back through history, I think an incumbent president tends to lose the midterms most of the time, as far as his.
I want to stop you right there.
Okay.
Because history in elections as of right now does not matter. This is the point I want to make abundantly clear to everybody, and everybody who's crashing out.
You're getting to my question. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, this is exactly what I want to talk about, because I talked about this on a market report a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to talk about it again.
Okay.
I'm going to make it explicitly clear here. We have been laboring under the assumption that our elections, at the state level or the county level or the House level or the Senate level, are around 0.5% inaccurate, because human error, corruption, the process loss, yada yada yada, about 0.5%. As long as the margin for error is beyond 0.5%, which is where the statutory limit is for recounts and all that stuff, that's a literal admission that the system can be no more than 0.5% accurate, right? Or accurate, not precise. And therefore, that's an assumption. Now, polling in general is anywhere from 3 to 5% inaccurate. I mean, those are the error bars. So anything plus or minus like 8 points is statistical fucking noise.
It's like
and if you want to make any want to make any conclusions about. And then I don't even want to talk about national averages for House elections. That's also dumb. That's another conflation and bad statistical. I mean, I can literally do 3 hours on damn lies, statistics, and polling and British polling. Like, dude, it's that bad in that order. And I've been saying this for years, going all the way back to fucking Brexit. How did they get Brexit so goddamn wrong? They were up by 12 fucking points.
Yeah, I was in the UK actually when that
was even with all the fraud they used to try and prevent,
to try and make it look better, because Brexit was 55-45. It wasn't 52-48 or whatever.
Oh no, I was talking to people in the stores in like London and Bath, and they're like all for the Brexit.
No, absolutely. And it's the same thing here. This idea that we're going to lose the midterms because Rich Barris or somebody else has supposedly got a good model for a handle on the fucking polling of the United States. Like, at this point in time, every previous midterm election does not matter, because we're now in an actual honest to God crisis period. Everybody realizes that at some level, everybody realizes that this is not normal. That's one. Two, half of the states are getting redistricted, and the Republicans are going to pick up like 14 seats anyway. That's two. Right. And then on top of everything else, if you clean up any portion of the voter fraud that matters, our elections that we assume are 0.5% accurate, which have been in any election that matters to the globalists, to the financialists, 7 to 10% inaccurate. How in the fuck are you going to use the past, knowing full well that they had their thumb on the scale of the friggin' results, and all they did was they moved the results to look like the polls, to make the polls look like they were accurate? This is all bullshit. Okay? I can write that story and call it a fucking television show. It doesn't make it true. Okay? So I need everybody to stop playing games with, the statistics say this, or the polling says that, or I trust this guy, or I don't trust that guy, and blah, 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 blah. I give you Nate Silver as your example. Remember Nate Silver, 538.com? Nate Silver did great statistical regression work, apparently, being able to predict the friggin' elections. And then when, he couldn't anymore, they got rid of him. Why did it did not work anymore? Because all of their assumptions about the polling and about everything, and all of their assumptions that they built into their cheating models were thrown out the window, because the American electorate had moved so far away from their models of how they could move the elections.
Yeah. How they could fake it.
Broke his model. And then they just threw him aside after he was no longer useful as a propaganda tool. Nate Silver was always a bad statistician, period. He was never a philosopher king. He was never an expert in shit. Okay, period. Because it's the same thing with any of these guys. They don't know anything. They're literally measuring noise.
Yeah, all they do is talk.
And they're just talking. And they use numbers to make themselves look good. The reality is that they're sent out there to prep the narrative of what they're going to do, what they're going to show you.
Programming.
They're pre-programming. That's where the predictive programming is. Polling is literally predictive programming.
So let's
the X-Files or anything else.
In the interest of time, I'll try to distill it. So we're looking at a situation where historical facts in elections are not necessarily real. We did have the feds storm one of the was it Georgia? They're looking at election fraud down there. We have a possibility that the elections may be honest this time around and we win the midterms, right? So that kind of just like diffuses the entire question of the midterms themselves, right? So if we do get the midterms, do you think that we'll have the wherewithal to kind of withstand the rest of the onslaught? Like, do you think that, and it'll have to be kind of a short answer because we got not a lot of time and we got E.M. who still needs to come on.
That's the E.M.'s area.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me add to what Tom's saying. Okay. Epstein list hasn't come out yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what people need to understand is that the steal that's been going on in the entire down ballot for 40 some odd years, really going back to Tammany Hall, right? But nationwide, the last 40 years, that costs a lot of money. That money's not available right now. And I guarantee you there have been conversations with folks that if they want to keep their wealth, that it's been demonstrated and proven the illicit gain of it. If you want to keep your wealth, you vote however you want to, but you do not go above the statutory limitations on the amount of funding that are put in. And oh, by the way, we know what that nonprofit's doing. We know what that donation's doing. We know how you're using that shell company over there to move funds over here to this PAC. Right. So the thought, the thought that just bringing out the mechanisms and the obvious evidence of the fraud is what they're doing to, get us back down to 0.5. That's not the entire effort that's going on to ensure that we have a more fair and honest election. Most all that shit we don't see, and that's private conversations at cocktail parties out at Long Island and down in, Dade County and et cetera. Right. So I want to put another piece out here, another concept, an idea that might help people. There isn't a plan. There is a commitment. And that commitment is over 60 years old of families. I think older. I think this goes back to right around Wilson's era. So I think this all goes back to pre-World War I, when Wilson was implanted. This may have formally all shaped up and started when they shot Teddy Roosevelt in the chest. And Teddy Roosevelt went and did the speech anyways.
Yeah.
Right? So this elite family reaction may have actually started its momentum and building and everything that's coming along. And I believe they tried it in, again, the intent, to Kokinder's statement, which I'm not completely in agreement with a lot of things, but this one, I think maybe there's some legs to it, that everything was being set up from World War I to World War II to diminish the British Empire to break us free of this, Praetorian regime, Praetorian guards, et cetera. Okay. There is a firm commitment. Plans can adapt and shift and change if you have a firm commitment. If you go with a plan without a firm commitment, we're going to do this. Well, no plan survives for first contact with the enemy, and the enemy is just going to make sure whatever plan you put out there, it's got first contact. So what people need to understand is that there is an absolute, no joke, much like the founding fathers, because of the Praetorian threat, this insider assassination, murder threat, there is a firm commitment. We are going to bring this regime down no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes.
Yep.
Right? And so for
No, I
us
agree.
running around saying there's trust the plan. No.
Yeah. Trust the plan is a British psyop.
Correct.
5D chess is a British psyop.
It's conspiracy theory. It's the same nonsense.
Same thing. It's the same thing. It's programming you into these easy tropes to then discredit you. Oh, you're just a,
and then anytime anything doesn't go right in the battle, it's like
you can say, see,
the plan sucks. There's no plan. They don't know what they're doing.
There's no plan. No, I know there isn't a plan. We're committed to winning.
Correct.
We're committed to winning.
It's because the enemy has a say, and the enemy is very good and very dug in and very much entrenched. And the enemy has a say. If I have a plan, the enemy's going to win. I have a commitment. I'll make a plan today as I need to for today. And I might have a plan, maybe something I set in motion today has got to set at the battle space 3 months from now.
Sure.
And so I'll do that. But where we are right now is we are at war. Back to the Patton concept.
Yes.
Right. We are at war. Right. And we have to take each day's battles for today's battles. And then we can run out forward and go, well, where might that take us? And how might the enemy react to that? It's not because I have a plan. I have a firm commitment. That firm commitment is these sons of bitches are going to go.
And the way you beat them is to study one, their assets, two, their operations manual, how they act and everything else. What do you think I've been doing for the last fucking 15 years of my life? Which is to understand how these people act, how they react.
Yes.
And then and if they continue to act and react in the way that I've seen them react in the past, I know what they're going to do next.
Yeah, it's my book, The Eternal War. That's exactly what it is. It's how they think, and so therefore, how are they going to operate?
Yep.
Right.
I mean, when you have an enemy where every day is opposite day in Trump's new America, how fucking hard is it for us to figure out what they're going to do tomorrow? Yeah. Donald Trump can say, I hate Nazis, and they will tomorrow come out and embrace Nazis. It's not fucking difficult when they're that obvious.
Yeah. However, they are deeply embedded. They are deeply entrenched. They do have so far owned the narrative space. Here, very much, Tom, to what you're articulating. There is one plan, right? And it is to win. But how do you win? You have to impoverish these motherfuckers, because the only thing they care about is impoverishment. They don't care if they lose their lives. They don't care if they go to prison. They don't care about any of that, right? Because to them, go ahead.
As a matter of fact, I was just watching the video that you sent me in text this morning, critical about how the British controlled the silver trade without actually owning any silver. I was like 5 minutes into it when Nick's like, "Can you go at 11 o'clock?" I'm like, "Oh, right, it is 11 o'clock your time. I got to go." And I'm like, am I having a cup of coffee and I'm eating some yogurt? And I'm like, going to watch this video and then we're going to do the thing in an hour. I'm like, "Oh no, dude, you're like Central Time, right? Central Time."
Yeah. Like, you'll love the video, by the way, right? It does such a great job. Yeah. So, but that's the thing. We have a plan. It's to win. And how do we win? We impoverish. We take away at least 80% of their wealth.
Yes.
At least 80%.
We're doing this on the last trading day of January. And so what we're watching today is a whole great fucking tape paint. They're just painting the tape into the close because they don't want silver to close the month at $100 an ounce, because and they're going to try and push gold down to $49.99, because what they don't want is to have to write the headlines on Monday, $5,000 an ounce. January closed gold, $5,000 an ounce. Silver closed at 100. Why? Psychological operations. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay,
but
Tom,
what's
I have a
going
question
on
for
with
you.
Besant, who I have now christened Big Gay Patton. We're going that guy doesn't know how to go backwards.
No.
Does not go backwards.
He's burning everything behind him. Yeah, he's burning long ships behind him. I have a question for you, Tom, and I know we got to go here, Nick, but I have a quick question for you, just for your quick thought. and we don't have to go into the guts of it.
Sure.
My suspicion is the big drop in gold, silver markets, et cetera, Bitcoin yesterday, I think it was, is profit taking.
Actually,
Because
it's today. It started yesterday and today.
Into today. I think it's profit taking because they're going to have to cover positions.
Yeah, that's part of it. I'm going to say that. And I know that like yesterday was the blow off top, like an emotional blow off top. But yeah, no, and again, it's a mix of profit taking, tape painting, all of this stuff. What that's going to matter is Monday morning. And here's the thing about silver in particular. Silver is going to be a negotiated settlement because until JP Morgan moves all of their gold from the registered to the eligible category, dude, it's like, or the other way around, until they start moving that silver around, until we have the problem we have in silver, just to make it abundantly clear. It's not that there's not a supply. You move silver to $100 an ounce, everybody wants to sell their silver. If I fielded one question about this week, I fielded a dozen from patrons, friends, subscribers, yada, yada, yada. The problem is we have a dearth of 1,000 ounce good for delivery LBMA and COMEX bars.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the refiners have been told to shut down.
Yep.
The wholesalers can't get any more credit from which banks? The same banks E.M was talking about earlier. They're trying to restrict the physical supply right now to demoralize people because they're only being offered 80 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar versus the spot price in silver. They've now had to retreat from write 20,000 paper contracts versus every ounce they have to, raise margin requirements, bomb the price on options expiration day, all that. They've now moved all the way back to, don't give them any credit so they can sell their silver. Don't give them an exit strategy.
Another piece for Tom.
While they're selling Bitcoin to cover their fucking positions, because that's
I can tell you, I've actually seen it on the ground. I know a few local retailers. They had lines out the door, and they're holding so much product because they can't get rid of it.
Right, they can't sell it.
Yeah, they can't. The wholesalers won't take it.
The refiners are being told to slow roll, making more because they don't want to They don't want those LBMA bars to be deliverable. Because if they're deliverable, then they have to deliver them against the contracts. Then they have to book the fucking loss. It's no different. These people never want to go to discovery, and they never want to pay. They never want to pay out. So
it's a shadow.
It closes the contract, and now you can't hypothecate. You can't relend against. You can't use it as collateral.
And you have to mark. And you have to mark your assets to market.
Correct.
They never want to mark these assets to market.
Okay, so I got another piece for you, Tom.
They have to show the whole of the fucking balance sheet of the goddamn bank.
No, absolutely.
And guys, we do have a little time, by the way. So don't.
Well, I got one last piece, Tom. What is as a chemist, right, and who understands the refining process? What is the single largest input outside the raw ore, et cetera, in the refining process that Europe is being stripped of? Energy production.
Mm-hmm.
You need a sizable amount of energy.
I was going to say cyanide, but that's that's what you use. That's what you use to leach the fucking silver out of the ore. But I'm like, cyanide.
Well, you Italians use it for other things too.
Supply of cyanide. We need energy to make cyanide. So
you need energy, right?
Yeah,
and so it's very interesting. We're convincing industrial powers to de-electrify.
Mm-hmm.
Who's behind that?
And at the same time, the Americans are building the largest aluminum smelter in the fucking world, which is literally congealed electricity.
Correct.
To be on board,
and
ready by 2030.
Isn't there a lot of bauxite down in places like Venezuela and Peru? And
I mean, but we have a lot of bauxite in the United States.
Yeah, we got everything we need right here.
Bauxite is. I mean,
we have what we need here, but a lot of the problem with mining here is not that the environmental concerns are as bad as we're told, but the EPA can kind of try to.
Yeah, but no. A certain phone call happens, and there's no EPA problem. So we need to stop worrying about.
Yeah, we need to
read the Zero Hedge article. They're talking about this thing being online, built and operating by the end of the decade. Okay, under Obama and the old Davosian rules, they wouldn't have gotten the initial fucking permit to this thing.
Maybe 30 years.
In 4 years, they have this thing built.
Yeah, I suspect what we're doing. Yeah, to the additional hit, I think we're always going to press them down to base contracts. That's always base metals. And I suspect what we were doing with Europe and the United Kingdom, et cetera, by getting them to reduce their energy production, and now they just cut off Russian gas because it's too easy to manipulate them, is specifically to get us through this period to where they can't actually even smelt, they can't freaking refine, they can't even physically produce the metals necessary in order to sustain and provide for their system.
Any kind of attempted re-upping their fight against Russia in the future. So now you starve them of all of that. And then, if I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but they're shutting off Russian piped gas. If you looked at the price of LNG, American LNG is going through the roof.
Yeah.
Trump wants to get shit started. There's another LNG export plant basically built by the Japanese in California that was shut down by Biden on day one. That thing's going back into production, and we're going to start exporting LNG to our good and dear allies, the Japanese, who are normalizing interest rates and normalizing monetary policy to do away with the yen carry trade, which has also been sustaining these motherfuckers over in Europe for decades.
Because we are freeing the Japanese from the British for the first time in over 200 years.
Yeah, let me ask about that, guys.
After the snap elections are on my birthday, E.M. My birthday's February 8th. The Japanese are the snap elections are going to happen on my fucking 58th birthday, and I expect within a week they will. The new coalition once the new coalition is set, they're going to call fucking Lavrov, and they're going to finally end World War II.
Yeah.
Let's actually get into this a little bit because I'm going to extend time a little bit.
We were supposed to end 15 minutes ago.
No, it's okay. I called and I said I can't. I've pushed my appointments forward because we got to hear this stuff. So, Japan dissolves parliament, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, that means they're going to go to war. And like, okay, first of all, V said it. He goes, no, Japan's not going to go to war. They can't really go. They don't have the kind of force to do it. But secondly, I want to hear from you guys. I guess I'll say Tom first, just arbitrarily. The effect of the dissolution of the Japanese parliament on the yen carry trade, if that is the primary or even a secondary goal, and what other goals might there be?
Okay, so remember, Takaishi is now allied with I can't remember the name of the party, but it's basically the Muzzies Go Home party in Japan. Okay, so it's basically the Japanese nativist party, right? No longer is it the CCP linked Komeita, right? The Liberal Democrat Party, which is the dominant party in Japan. So basically, imagine the worst of the Republicans and the Democrats got together and had a baby, right? Okay. What about the CIA? Okay. Now, Takaishi is a native.
Axolotl tank.
Yeah. So now, CIA axolotl tank. Exactly. On top of everything else. Let's just keep the Dune reference running. But so you have Takaishi in Japan. Was able to form a stable coalition with the nativist party. Again, forgive me for not remembering the name of the Japanese name of it. The reason that she's got that coalition, the reason you dissolve parliament is so you can hold snap elections so that you can get a better, you can consolidate power. That's why this is normally done. So she's consolidating power with her nativist partner to kick out the globalist, to destroy what's left of the globalist minority in Japanese government and give them no say whatsoever. This will be the first time since the end of World War II that Japan will have a nativist coalition government.
I will actually say it goes all the way back to the Meiji, the beginning of the Meiji. Yeah.
My understanding of Japanese history, E.M., is not that good. I understand this, right? That's all. I only understand the post-war period, and only at a very superficial level. I'm giving you all of my Japanese understanding. Okay. But what's important? But what is important about all this is that there are two things that are outstanding and need to be fixed. The first is the fact that the Japanese, thanks to the British, have never signed a peace treaty with the Russians ending World War II over the Kuril Islands. That needs to end. Okay. That needs to finally be put to bed. The second thing is the governing board. Where the Japanese parliament is actually not sovereign. It still has to run all of its ideas past the British and American led, or I think it's mostly American led governing board that actually sets policy for Japan. Okay. Japan's
WT.
constitution is not sovereign. So these two things have to be resolved. And the way I read Trump's meeting when he went and he left ASEAN, spoke with, dealt with the Thai Cambodian war and met with Xi and all that stuff. Then he goes to Takaishi and goes to meet in Japan. That was not a hail the conquering, hail the conqueror. That was a thank God the liberator's here.
It was a declaration of freedom, independence.
Yeah, it really
Declaration
it really
of independence.
They were inviting. They were bringing Trump in, and they were saying, "Thank God our liberator is finally here."
Yes.
That's the only way to have read that. If anybody disagrees with me on that, fuck you, Groypers. Go watch the fucking ceremonies. Okay,
Yes.
Go watch it, and then go Juiceburg. Okay,
Yeah.
That's what happened. And I didn't expect it to happen. When I saw it, I was like, holy shit. And then think about it all. And then like, oh, right, we have a nativist coalition, all of these things. This is what's going on. And then you watch the Bank of Japan liberated finally to start raising interest rates again.
Yep.
So, they've been Wade has been very timid about this, more timid than I expected him to be. But given the political situation, the unsettled political situation within the Japanese parliament, made sense. Now he's been given his marching orders. You can normalize rates, and I want them normalized with the United States. Because if the United States and Japan are within, say, 50 or 25 or 50 basis points of each other, Britain and Europe can't use the yen as a cheap funding source to get cheap dollars through the arbitrage.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the dissolution of the Japanese parliament, to kind of summarize what Tom just said, he's back there in the background with his very manly pour over. We were discussing how this is going to do a couple of things. Basically end World War II by creating the treaty between Japan and Russia over the islands, of which I cannot remember their name. And then we also were discussing say again?
Kuril Islands.
The Kuril Islands.
Yeah.
And then also, and perhaps more germane to this conversation, the loss, the removal of the pressure on Ueda, keeping him from hiking rates in the Japanese yen. So
let's take a step back first. Okay. What was the kerfluffle in Southeast Asia about? Why was that stirred up?
I was going to ask if it was related. This is great.
It's related. And the reason is that roughly 80% of Japan's manufacturing happens in ASEAN, in Southeast Asia, heavily in Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. And this goes back decades. So Japan, when it realized its cost structures, it realized its population decline, et cetera, began investing heavily in ASEAN as its, lower end manufacturing. Although they do some higher end stuff there too. I have a friend of mine who does Japanese manufacturing in the Philippines, and has in most of the audio electronic space, et cetera. So if you are going to threaten Japan to stay in line with, the financialist system, you would disrupt its supply chains, you would disrupt its manufacturing, you would disrupt its, at this point, hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in ASEAN. So why did Trump go there and shut that all down in a day? Why, and how did he do it? Well, we're actually the three largest investors in ASEAN for all this type of manufacturing are China, Japan, and the United States. Number 4 is South Korea. So we went there and articulated, and the Japanese, I guarantee you, Xi and his people also articulated, you're not doing that, or we will, you're not going to start these stupid conflicts for these people, or we will pull out. So that got shut down first, so that it was a demonstration to the Japanese that we got your back. We understand the broader dynamic. We will use our political, our diplomatic, and our martial powers, because we actually have, I think it's the second largest now embassy of the United States is actually in Thailand, because we've been doing operations there. Most people don't realize this, but there's been a low-grade insurgency, Islamic insurgency, backed by the city of London, etc., going on in Southeast Asia and the southern Philippines and Indonesia for 60 frickin' years. So give me a second. So that was a demonstration to the Japanese. We got your back. We will be with you as partners, even if it comes to using, diplomatic power, financial power, economic power, and martial and intelligence power. We got your back. We will help preserve your investments overseas. Then he goes to Japan and he demonstrates, and this is less about the liberator. It is the support for the Japanese who are liberating themselves. Right? And I want to be very careful. It seems like a small distinction, but it's not. What's happening is that for the first time since the beginning of the Meiji era, back in the 1800s, the Japanese are being given their freedom. But they have to take it themselves. They have to make it happen themselves. You can't give another people freedom. They have to free themselves.
No, agree.
Right?
It's very good. Yeah.
So with this, in both you guys have a strong background in anywhere from finance, investment, banking, things like that, which needs no explanation or introduction. The carry trade itself, a lot of the concern is that if the carry trade is unwound, we're going to see a significant drop in, equity markets and things like that. But I'm a Forex trader. That's my bread and butter. And what I noticed was as soon as the as soon as the Japanese parliament was dissolved, the Japanese yen went up by, I think, like 4%, like in hours. Whatever the percentage was, it was well beyond whatever sigma event. It was I looked back, that hadn't happened in ages, maybe not at all. So that said, the assumption is people are going to move into the yen because they're thinking that it's going to get stronger because they're going to hike the rates. And Tom, you made you had a theory at one point. I don't know how strongly you felt about this theory that you had, but that it might be, if the carry trade ends, then the Western financial system is not going to have its liquidity. That's not theory. That's just, established fact. But that it might be the City of London and the Bank of England that may have to pick up the slack on those liquidity injections.
Well, they're the only ones who have the capacity to do so, right?
Well, the U.S. and when I looked
at the
infrastructure
relationship.
Forex,
I mean, in the short term, it's the SMB that's taking on that role. The Swiss National Bank is taking on that role. They've already gone back to the zero bound, but the Swiss National Bank doesn't have the capacity to offset the Bank of Japan. So it may have to be like who's going to do it.
Well, and you're saying,
when I came back, and I think that's what I just popped off the top of my head while you and I were chatting that day. Literally, Nick, was just like, well, who else has got a big enough balance sheet to do that? It would be the Bank of England or the ECB. And the ECB is not built. The ECB is not designed to do that.
It doesn't have the infrastructure or the relationship.
It doesn't have the infrastructure. It doesn't have the structure.
They don't have a homogenized bond market is what they don't have.
Well, and they can't draw upon the Commonwealth as well. So people need to understand how much the Commonwealth's assets. Yes.
Right. They're trying to build that. And then, and look at it. I'm going to shift to Poland. Let's shift to Poland real quick. The Poles coming out the other day and say we're adding another 150 tons of gold. They're up to 1,100 tons of gold because they're still on the zloty. Because they're never going to go on the euro. They're not buying gold so that they can all be transferred to the ECB. Like Donald Tusk has been
zloty, and I'm a currency trader, and I didn't know that. And that Poland is part of the EU, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And same thing with Hungary with the forint. They
not the monetary.
Neither of them are ever going to adopt the euro.
They're not part of the euro.
It's obvious, but and same thing.
Right. The euro's done. Yesterday, the other day, when Hungary had a no vote and it's a unanimous vote, the EU said we're doing it anyway. It ended the EU.
Yeah,
it's going to run a momentum, but it's over.
Well, and the other thing is let's bring in Martin Armstrong for a second. We're watching a massive run into the euro right now, right? Yeah. So the euro's like $1.19.5 and $1.18.7 this morning, but it hit $1.20 the other day. We've actually had the dollar has struck back into the end of the month, right? Gold is down, silver's down, the dollar is up. Wow, okay, fine. So as we get into the end of the month, but what Marty always says is like, in order for a currency to collapse, first it has to strengthen well beyond its ability to carry carry the cost, and then it collapses. And so what I'm watching right now, it's really funny. The City of London douchebags on Twitter, the ones that aren't calling me part of the $7,000 club, are all they come out and they scream that, oh, what was your call about the euro going to 50 cents, dude? And it's $1.20 and the dollar's going to die and everything else. I'm like, dude, I'm watching this going, yeah, by the way, my structural short on the euro is still in both of my portfolios for the 2 newsletters that I write. Okay. Still there.
Things don't just collapse.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit because I know goddamn well that the euro's long-term number is 50 cents.
EM, you were about to say what I was going to say. Things don't.
They don't just collapse. They have to blow off the top. That's how these non-thermodynamically equilibrium systems work. They don't collapse. They blow off the top. They have an exothermic reaction and boom.
And those of us who have been...
And also to that point, the main reason why the euro would go higher is because people need the cash.
Yeah, they're going to ground. Yeah.
They don't want
it's
money going to ground. It is not.
Yeah.
It's and all that's happening right now in the bond markets, and you'll see this, that like the German 10-year won't move and the French 10-year won't move and blah, 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 all this stuff won't move. There's a reason for that. What they're doing is they're literally, I think they're selling U.S. treasuries on the long end of the curve and then laundering it all through to try and maintain bond spreads. And then, and they're probably raping the friggin' Swiss at this point to save the Bundesbank and to save Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, I saw something today
short on gold.
So Tom, you'll have to verify this because you keep up with these more than I do. But I saw today that Germany was recalling all of its gold.
Yeah, well, they have to because Germany's because Merz, who's so Frederick Merz, the Chancellor of Germany. Let's talk about his background. BlackRock Freddie, right? Who just surrendered at Davos. Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock. So Germany is surrendering. The CDU, we might be seeing the moment when the CDU finally says no to the globalists, the Christian Democratic Union, right? Angela Merkel's party finally breaks free of the globalists. And then, are we 6 months? I mean, it's just literally popping into my head. Are we 6-8 months away from snap elections in Germany where the CDU and AfD get together and pull the Germans out of the EU?
I don't think
if we give Germany back their fucking gold out of the Marineros building, it'll be for this reason.
I don't know that Germany sustains as a unified entity anymore.
Well, I don't either. That's another option. Another option is, of course, that it splits along
because it isn't that old as a union, right?
Neither is Italy. None of most of these countries.
Correct.
They're all less than 170 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So,
no, I sent you that message on, on interrogator's view of Fink at this last Davos. That was a guy that had been defeated.
Absolutely.
That was a guy, tone of voice, deference to Musk, deference to others, body posture. That was a guy who'd been defeated. Yep.
And
doesn't mean he won't stop fighting, by the way, but yeah.
And I told everybody 4 years ago, the first time I looked at BlackRock's balance sheet and I looked at they're only a $40 billion fucking company in terms of shareholder equity. They're up to about $80 billion. I got news for you. JP Morgan can print that tomorrow and buy the whole fucking thing.
So what I did notice is that also
coffee money.
For those who might be concerned about the carry trade, when the Japanese yen got really strong in that moment, at the dissolution of the Japanese parliament, the dollar actually got super weak. I think that the assumption, at least what came to mind for me, not thinking about European governments selling long-ended treasury bonds into the market, which might be what's causing the problem as well, but more about, okay, they're going to start printing dollars to make up the difference, like to keep the not the carry trade itself, but to keep the damage from the carry trade becoming contagion, right? Because we're going to have to buttress that liquidity somehow. So I figured maybe it's like, okay, here's the deal: Japan, do your thing. We'll back you up financially, and that
Japan doesn't need financial backing. They need security around the Japanese economic empire. They don't need financial. They're good.
Not that Japan needs the backing. The markets need the backing.
Well,
because the Japanese
so now we can go on a weak dollar policy, and we can print dollars and buy gold.
Which is, by the way, devaluation of the dollar, I understand, was one of the primary requirements made by Chinese many years ago to actually keep things going. So, now devaluing the dollar, thank you, sweetheart. Devaluing the dollar doesn't help a lot of people, but at the same time, it may just be what's necessary. And quite frankly, I think devaluing the dollar is just the path that we're on, whether we like it or not. So we may as well get on that train and ride it strategically until whatever's coming next.
And devaluing the dollar versus what?
Yeah.
Right? Other currencies?
Well, I would say at this point,
the old regime.
Think of it in terms of assets and liabilities. Right? The dollar's purchasing power of euros is going down. Who gives a shit? We don't care about buying shit from the Europeans. We don't give a shit about buying shit from the fucking Brazilians or anybody else who's like making fucking noises. You know what we care about? Okay, so we want the dollar value of gold to rise. Why? Yeah. Because we have a bunch of gold on our balance sheet, and that offsets our liabilities.
Well, yeah, and we got a whole lot in the ground,
and we're literally at the cusp of birthing a digital domestic dollar that doesn't trade outside our fucking borders to liquefying our domestic economy. Because remember, we're moving away from debt-based British financing, and we're moving towards a system of American productive capacity.
Okay, Tom, I have a question. I have a genuine question for you there because it's been a very big concern for me. The stablecoin regime, right? For every dollar, every dollar lent into existence, you have to buy $1 of debt. Does that not make the U.S. government the base of the U.S. economy?
In some ways, yes, it does. Not that's what we're talking about.
And does it not sustain a debt-based system?
Well, what it does is it transfers the ownership of the debt from foreign creditors to domestic creditors. Now the U.S. government owes that money to Americans pulling a yield off of those stable.
Totally get it, but does that not sustain the same system? It's only we've gotten rid of the foreign parasites to further support domestic parasites.
It all depends upon the rate, and it all depends upon, is it just a transitional system to something different, where eventually then we replace those dollar treasury-backed stable coins with gold-backed stable coins, or
so this brings up or
commodity-backed. I think that E.M. just real quick.
I think the issue ultimately, E.M., is what I'm getting at, is it's not that the government's not going to issue debt in order to liquefy like the repo market and in the financial market. No, none of that stuff. It has to exist. Correct. But the question is, what is it serving? And is the rate of return on those things lower than the growth of the economy and the wage? As long as wages are outpacing the coupon payments on the debt, who cares?
Okay, so Tom, here's where the great concern from people I talk to and myself as I noodle through all of this. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to put a number out there just as a placeholder, right? But let's say that over the last 150 years, there has been $200 trillion stolen from the American peoples. That's not dollars, but American productivity, American families building assets and wealth has been just stolen. Okay. There are, how many billionaires have been minted in the United States in that period? How many centimillionaires, and how many of them are in finance? It's a sizable amount in both cases. Mm-hmm. The concern is that, and this is, again, I wrote a piece to this morning, is that we're transitioning to a system to transition to a system. I agree. I don't think stable coins last. I think that's the break free mechanism, right? It's the break free, stabilized mechanism. And then we move to something that the rest of the world will actually agree is something real. And that's, probably some basket of commodities, right? And that has some internal fluctuations, et cetera. Anyways, the concern is that historically in these financialist kill chains, this is what happens. They bring it to a crisis phase, generally a war, but they bring it to some crisis phase. That brings down and crashes the economy, crashes the financial system, whatever, in all these complex ways. that then drives a necessity to move to a new financial system. But what is that new financial system actually doing? It's locking in the theft of the previous financial system. And so none of that. And so the in the consciousness of the more common people and the middle class people and even some wealthy people is that the steal has happened. You're screwed. You're never going to get any of that money back. But we're going to build a system you can trust more now so that you can at least work for the next 5 generations to try and rebuild it.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a really great way to bring it around, because regardless of how, say, the midterms go or any of the things we were talking about earlier, we're talking about a structural reset. And, the
it has to happen, by the way, right? But
what's that?
It has to happen. The structural reset has to happen.
Has to happen. Yeah. And then that's one thing that there's a couple things you said that V definitely will agree with. And one of them is that, and we use the word collapse. You can call it a lot of things. Don't take this the wrong way. But what V says it really well. So the collapse isn't good. It's not bad. It's necessary. And we could call it maybe a collapse of certain things, whatever it is.
And you can define, and collapse can be framed in different ways.
Absolutely.
It can be 15 years, be 15 years of stagflation, right? It could be, which we've basically already had for all intents and purposes.
But we're going to feel it this time. So,
well, the issue is that
I think we felt it, Nick. I
mean,
I'm sorry when our women are so fucking crazy that to gain status, they neutered their fucking children. We felt
or sent their daughters to OnlyFans.
Well, let me put it this way. We felt it, but a lot of people have no idea what they're feeling. They don't know what's behind it, right? They're just getting propagandized. So, they're watching Netflix tell them that neutering your children is a service to the great, whatever.
But again, this comes down to, it's a very important point that I watched a video the other day really clarified this, which is that woke became a status symbol. Going woke became a status symbol for women.
Well, because it was financed and funded by, the counter Occupy Wall Street folks. So it created these artificial status hierarchies.
No, I mean, just at the end of the day, it was a status.
It's a status symbol. Yes.
And I immediately tied it to the movie Heathers, going all the way back to the Gen X, nearly perfect Gen X movie Heathers, where suicide, where they killed this girl and then they frame it as a suicide, and then she becomes even more popular in death because she was suicidal and she talked about everybody's pain, and then everybody wanted to commit suicide. And
Gladwell talks about that in one of his books.
And ChatGPT is getting sued for such things, isn't it?
And the opposite side of that is, why did those women go that crazy? The other great Gen X movie of all time, Repo Man. I talked about this yesterday. I haven't seen that yet. Oh my God, I've never seen Repo Man. Now you've got to go into Repo Man. And now what's Repo Man all about? Repo Man is about a disaffected punk kid, Otto, who winds up becoming a repo man in the middle of disaffected, bombed out late 80s Los Angeles. They're chasing around some 58 Malibu that's got a friggin' alien in the back of the trunk. That's not what's important. What's important is that this movie is a meditation on masculinity and false masculinity, the same as The Big Lebowski, which is exactly about nothing more than false masculinity everywhere.
But
that's all that movie is about.
But it's hilarious.
And they're both hilarious.
I could do this all
just so you understand that the men are all checked out and falsely masculine. The women then abreact and start going into suicidal empathy because they're all social climbers, because that's what women do. They will climb over each other to get right, and boom, and then and it was all encouraged.
If we can it was actually funded, the artificial status hierarchies. But if we can bring it back, this is a genuine concern. We don't have to have an answer right now, okay? Mm-hmm. But the genuine concern right now that could quite literally lead to revolution, bloody revolution, and not by these idiots in the street in Minneapolis, et cetera, is that the growing belief is that what's happening right now is we're going through a structured collapse and transition to lock in the theft of generations of stolen wealth, and that there is no plan, no articulation of how any of that wealth will ever be restored to the American people, and that the people that are doing this, the ones that are doing the structure, the restructure and all these clever, brilliant ways, right, that has to happen, are locking in their own theft, because every single one of them was made incredibly wealthy by this theft.
Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump as a person and as a deal maker is not designed psychologically to hold the line against the theft. His goal and his failing as a person is to cut the deal that gets the least amount of violence.
There you go. But unfortunately, revolutions happen on the path that the elites take intentionally, in all good intentions, to try and prevent them. You're absolutely right, Tom. You're absolutely right. And having been in investment banking and big billion-dollar deals and been at the table and done all the there's a thing called paying the deal. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Mm-hmm.
Leaving something on the table, paying the deal.
Yep.
That's so that everybody gets a bit of,
Yep.
whatever the transact. Okay. The system and the regime has not been leaving anything on the table for 60 years.
Yep.
It hasn't paid anything back into the deal. It hasn't tipped it hasn't paid the analyst an extra bonus for, right? And all we're hearing about is this transition to this new sophisticated, clever, tokenized system. And what's rising amongst people is this sense that the steals happened. They don't give a fuck. They've all been made ludicrously wealthy on it. And all they're doing is securing their positions in asset classes, in digitized assets that there's no, how do you recover that?
I know. Yeah. No, I can tell you that what we would call the Zoomerwathen.
Yeah.
Right. That would be the young, that would be the 18 to 20 year olds right now.
Yeah.
No, not the Groypers. The Zoomerwathen. They're different. The Groypers are like old, bitter fucking 4chan dudes like me.
Yeah.
But that are not, that I got out of that shit. I'm talking about the Zoomerwathen, for lack of a better term, are the kids like my daughter that really don't trust any of what's happening.
Correct.
At all.
Correct.
And you can't even buy her, and you can't even buy her loyalty with no tax on overtime. It's better. It's good.
Correct.
It's good.
Or not even no income tax. Or not even no income tax. Yeah.
But the only way we get those kids through this is as their parents, we say, we understand and we're willing to put what we've earned back on the table for them as much as possible. Because
totally agree, but Tom,
I know. I get where you're
infinitesimal fraction of our generation has any assets at all.
I know.
Right, and the millennials.
I'm doing my best here, dude. I don't.
No, I know. No. Yeah. And I'm not looking for an answer from you, Tom. I'm just.
I know.
Articulating.
I'm looking for the best way for us to articulate the mechanisms by which we can avoid what you're talking about, and to hold these assholes' feet to the fire and hold Trump's better instincts against it, and hold to Trump to his better instincts. And I think that in general, what they are saying is like, I don't know that we can get back the money that's been stolen. Yeah. That's we can only force them to put as much of that money on the table to rebuild America as we can.
Well,
whatever that is.
The best thing that we can do is invalidate most of that stolen wealth so that it can't be used against us in the future.
Agreed.
Cancel the Q-tips.
And in some ways, Trump has already said, who do we do it? Like he's almost making the argument, like how much of the theft, how much of our debt has actually just been theft and fraud?
Yes.
Why the fuck should we even pay it back?
Correct.
And he's threatened, and he and Besson both have fundamentally questioned this and said, you know what? You think you guys hold financial tools over us, Bank of England, that you control $4 trillion worth of fucking treasuries? No, let's cancel the Q-tips. Fuck you.
Well, I think it goes beyond that. If you look at, I've written on this too. So what are some of, again, not trying to go for answers here, but some of the ways in which we reduce the ire is we impoverish a whole lot of these people, as we touched on earlier. And that's going to drop asset values substantively. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to accept depreciation across the board in most asset classes. We're going to have to.
At least in some asset classes that have been hyper financialized.
Correct. Completely agree with that.
How about we lower the cost of the brownstones in Brooklyn?
Yes. Correct. Real estate's number one.
And it doesn't have to be real estate across the board. It has to be real estate in certain areas of the country where the capital got
totally agree. I totally agree. Right. So we've got to do that. We've got to allow depreciation. What we have to do is we have to allow a lot of these wealthy elites to not be wealthy anymore.
Yep.
Because they didn't earn it through productivity gains, building out the middle class, right? And those that did do need to be secured and do need to be protected. I totally and absolutely agree with that. right? And and I'll let you guys go here.
Yeah. That's
I actually started
after
this
statement.
I started all of this journey, Tom, 26 years ago in Silicon Valley, trying to, because I could see all this coming. I didn't understand it in anywhere the depths that I do now.
Right.
But I saw this coming, and I realized we needed to bring several billion people into the capital asset owning class. And the way in which we could do that is we needed to use Silicon Valley like venture investing, angel seed and venture investing, but not just in technology. And we needed to use Wall Street for stock securitized companies to help people build maybe not $1 billion company, maybe not even a $200 million company, but to build smaller for stock companies that were part of, using the old Japanese keiretsu concept and model and idea that were going ventures in a larger industrial. So that's what got me started on this. I've been working that out in detail for 26 years now. There is a path for us to rebuild the middle class rapidly, as long as we can stop the graft, and we can cut out government, just vast parasite, et cetera. There is a way if we can allow for the impoverishment of people who earn their money through basic theft. And that is going to crash certain types of asset classes because they've been buying those asset classes with that stolen money that's been driving it up. Right.
Agreed. And so what I would say is if you want a signpost that we're on the right path, Trump went out to all the AI companies and said, "You want AI? Build your own fucking power plants."
Yeah.
That's a big one because that builds an infrastructure. Because here's the thing. You're building actually a productive thing. They can then they build the power plant to run the data servers and the fucking neighborhoods that are going to serve the data center.
This is the same model with the railroads and then later with the freeways. It was the same.
So
same
at the end
model.
of the day, and then let them own this and then get government out of being, and the electric companies get them
monopolies,
the
monopolies.
Which gives them unbelievable amounts of fucking local political power.
Correct.
By the way, I've been screaming about this shit for fucking 30 years.
I'll tell you what, guys. Here's what we're going to do.
I wanted every goddamn burgclave in America to be a propane powered hydrogen, localized hydrogen fuel cell thing. I don't understand why we don't have a goddamn decentralized grid. We've had the technology for 20 years.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do it.
Hyper centralize and financialize everything
as a result of this show. Right. Yeah. And this is going to end up being a part one because we could continue and we need to continue. I'm actually going to have to review this entire show and maybe construct something and have you guys back like next week. If you guys can.
I'm off for February, guys.
That's right. So we'll
do it. Yeah.
Tom and I are going to make plans behind your back.
Awesome. I'm used to it.
We're going to have your back. That's why we're going to do it. But yeah, this is actually by the time that I edit this and post it, which editing is like, I don't cut anything out. This could be a barn burner, guys. So thank you all for coming on. Links for everybody is in the description. Tom Luongo, Gold, Goats and Guns. We got E.M. Burlingame. You got your website, emburlingame.com. Everybody's got Twitters. Get in there.
You guys all know who we are.
Yeah, and by the way, like I said, I'm in your Patreon. I pay for your data, Tom. And E.M. I mean, I knock on E.M.'s door and he makes me bugger off by giving me like signed books and stuff. I'm
sometimes a bottle of wine. Sometimes
a bottle of very good Italian wine, by the way. So thank you all for watching. Guys, open mind. All I got to say, if you're getting information and not including it in your matrix, at least considering it, then you're doing it wrong. And that's just coming from, somebody who likes to pretend to be an analyst. So thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next time.